future, and I've heard something that I thought, I grew up in Cortez, by the way. I've been a small businessman for the previous 30 plus years of my life. Started my own business right out of college with a $10,000 loan. I did build it. I'm proud of it. We worked hard to be able to actually build a business, to be able to create jobs, and I hope that this is something that I truly bring to casting your vote in Washington. It's been that real life experience of the 3rd Congressional District. I've had to have dirt under my fingernails. I've had to struggle. I've worried about my family and being able to provide for them. And traveling through this district, these are many of the same concerns that we have right now. And give you a little background on what we've been doing legislatively in terms of standing up for this district. I think probably first and foremost, I just met with CPAC, potato farmers, just a little bit ago. It's about water. To be able to grow our crops, to be able to grow our communities, to be able to provide jobs, to be able to create some certainty going forward. We were able to stand up through our office to be able to protect what I labeled as a water grab by the federal government. Some of you may have heard this, the National Forest Service had been putting out a rule, and I need to emphasize the word rule. This was not anything that had been asked for legislatively from any member of either the House of Representatives or the United States Senate. It was a rule that was being proposed by the Forest Service that was going to require our ski areas, ranchers who have BLM leases and had paid for and developed water rights on public land to turn those water rights over to the federal government. We stood up for our Colorado water rights. And to let you know how fast some things can move, found out about this on a Tuesday. The rule was going to go final on a Friday. During that period of time, I was able to bring in Harris Sherman, Undersecretary of the National Forest Service, Bruce Tidwell, out of the Forest Service, to be able to point out that in Colorado we happen to have something called private property rights that we will stand for. We also have a priority system here in Colorado when it comes to our water that we will stand for. We also have something called state rights that we will stand for, and this was not going to be acceptable. We were also able to reach out to a member of Congress, Rob Bishop out of Utah. He chairs a subcommittee, a committee that I sit on natural resources that oversees public lands. We held a hearing on this. It held the rule. That rule was then held up. It is now in litigation, and we're working on legislation to make sure we are going to protect Colorado's water rights, our personal private rights in terms of water, and to make sure that priority system and state rights stays intact. That is critical. Second thing that we were able to do, and this was not on the legislative end, but it's something that we have to be able to continue to deal with, it is rules and regulations that are growing out of the bureaucracy. If you're in the farm and ranch community, you may have heard a little bit about it. Department of Labor proposed a rule that is going to impact how our children are able to work on the family farm. You would not be able to work and stack hay higher than 6 feet. You could not handle a mature animal. Bottom line is you weren't going to be able to do what you need to do on a family farm or ranch, and that's learned by doing. During the course of the hearing that I called, I chair a subcommittee that oversees agriculture. I called the hearing and brought in the Department of Labor to be able to explain this rule. They pulled the rule the day before our hearing with good cause, a bad rule. I was able to explain to that representative from the Department of Labor a little bit of what I did growing up as a boy in Cortez. My dad made sure I had a full-time summertime job from the time I was 12 years old on. I bucked bales, moved pipeline through a hayfield. I got from one field to the next on the back of an old Ford tractor, and I lived to be able to tell the tale. Our children need to be able to learn to do this, because our farm and ranch community, we don't owe an awful lot to them. You know, we talked about the United States military to be able to protect the security of this country. Believe me, food is a security item as well. Our farmers, our ranchers on a diminishing plot of land continue to feed not only this country, but a good portion of the world as well. We need to be standing up for them. The good news that came out of that hearing, as I said, they pulled the rule the day before and said they were going to re-examine it. Senator Thune out of South Dakota also picked it up and started trumpeting this message as well. The administration announced about a month and a half ago that they were pulling the rule for the balance of the year. Now what's concerning is the words "the balance of the year." They'll be back. We see a lot of rules and regulations that come forward, and once they go final, they have the impact of law, and it takes the proverbial act of Congress to be able to pull back those rules. As a consequence, I supported and we passed with bipartisan support out of the House of Representatives what was called the RAINS Act. What the RAINS Act is going to do is something that we in Colorado, if you've been around here a while, fully understand and appreciate that we did right in our state. And what that relates to is actually the sunset provisions that we have. We passed it. We're going to take a look at laws that have been passed. We're going to look at the regulations that have been developed over a period of time to make sure that they did not exceed or if they did not fulfill the legislative intent that was passed. This RAINS Act is going to actually have Congress getting involved back into that rulemaking process, which I think is a positive step forward. Because one of the first town hall meetings that I held, in fact the first, happened to be down in Monte Vista, sat down again with potato farmers, and one of the first words out of their mouth when I said, "Tell me about your issues," I was ready for Colorado water. We started talking about the overreach of the EPA, about the dust controls, the ability to be able to spray the crops, to be able to get the yields, and so that potatoes can remain a viable, vegetable, healthy alternative for our children on the school lunch menus. These are all rules that are impacting us. Some bills that I've been able to pass through Congress. I passed 5 pieces of legislation through the full House of Representatives, and I'm pleased to be able to tell you that we were able to pass all of these with bipartisan support. 2 pieces that I'd like to particularly look at for just a moment. One was the Small Hydroelectric and Jobs Act of 2012. What this was going to do was to be able to strip away red tape, to be able to allow our local water districts to be able to put in small hydroelectric units along the conduits and pipelines that were built by the Bureau of Reclamation throughout the western United States, to be able to create clean energy, to make sure that we have that opportunity. And we have the empirical evidence that if my bill had its full effect just in the state of Colorado, we could generate as much electricity as the Glen Canyon Dam out of our ditches. That's a positive, common sense piece of legislation. It's sitting on the doorstep of the United States Senate waiting for action. Second piece of legislation that I passed out with bipartisan support was the Planning for America's Energy Future Act of 2012. As we see what's going on in the Middle East, as we fill up our vehicles right now, I filled up my small truck is a Ford F-150. I'm afraid to fill up my F-350 because it's a diesel, just in terms of the cost. $80 to be able to top off. I had about a quarter of a tank left, just to be able to top it off. Is it an appropriate time for this nation to pursue what Jimmy Carter laid out in 1979 in terms of moving us to energy self-sufficiency in this country? I think with what we see on the world stage, what's happening in Iran right now, what's happening in Syria right now, what's happening in Libya, what's happening over in Egypt right now with rockets going across the Gaza Strip, with the Iranian Navy at sea, now is the time for us to be very serious about creating energy sufficiency in this country. I voted to make sure that we're trying to do all we can to be able to pass the Keystone Pipeline, but we also have natural resources right here that we can develop as well. The bill that I proposed was going to require the Secretary of the Interior working with the Secretary of Agriculture to be able to work off of the 30-year nonpartisan energy assessment plan for the United States, and to be able to develop a responsible plan for the development of our natural resources. I enumerated in the bill all of the above: wind, solar, geothermal, hydroelectric, oil, gas, oil shale, and minerals as well. We're importing right now 100% of our rare earths, even though we have them here in our country, from China. We need to make sure we're getting that security right here at home. I passed that bill through again with bipartisan support, and I hope you share this with me. Rather, the President, I'm not being political, this just happens to be the truth. The President embraced the $2 billion loan through the Import-Export Bank for Brazil to be able to drill off of their shores. If we're going to be developing resources, making those sorts of commitments, to me it's far more sensible when we are looking at double-digit unemployment in so many of our counties, right here in the 3rd Congressional District, and indeed we're seeing the unemployment rate tick up, not go down nationwide.